Okay, so it's super easy to make a Yarn conversation in GDevelop 5 with variables to change your scene and control a conversation. Okay, it took me 7 YouTube videos, 23 wiki entries, and 3 weeks I could not get this fucking thing to work. Okay, so I got it working today and I distilled it down to 9 event triggers. Super simple, the bare minimum, and I'm going to walk through it in place so it doesn't break, but it's super clean, and I'm going to go super slow because I could not find a tutorial that went at my speed, which is apparently an idiot. So no offense, if you get anything out of this, please like this video because this was a pain in the So, all right, so I did get this work. It's pretty clean and simple. Let's go ahead and start with the bare minimum pieces that I have. Anyway, so the first thing that you're gonna want is a global variable. Okay, so go ahead and set up a global variable. I created one called which picture. This is gonna show how you can flip assets or get data or variables back from Yarn to use in your scene, not just echoing out text for your dialogue. I'll do that as well. Okay, so out of the global variable is named which picture, and I've got some basic text containers. One is named convo for conversation. I have a second text variable called answer, and they're all defined here, just simple text holder pieces. And I have a trigger. You could do collide, you could do on mouse, whatever. I just had like a roll over here to trigger all this. Okay, so all the stuff happens in events. Now, like I said, I'm just gonna click through everything I did, and this should be at a pace where you can actually reproduce exactly what I'm doing. So my first event is at the beginning of the scene. We're gonna just click, and I'll do a duplicate so you can see where this goes. So you do an add an action, and I'm just gonna replicate this. Add an action, you're just gonna type dialogue. We're gonna do this a bunch. Dialogue, and you're gonna look for load dialogue tree from JSON file. Okay. Now if you click that, it's going to ask you what the file name is. It obviously knows which one I picked, but if you type any name, blah, 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 it's going to create the file for you. Okay? You click that and it'll just give you this. But if you did it without creating a file first, it'll bring you to the Yarn interface, which is a bunch of nodes in a visual format. So you will be brought to something that looks like this. And I did the absolute bare minimum to make it clear to understand, at least for me. So I have a node, and these nodes actually have canonical names to them that you're going to reference. Okay, so the first one is start, and just walking through it real quick, feel free to pause and actually look at the syntax, because the syntax and spacing is critical. And I went through and make sure it was really clear and legible, and it actually ran. So you can pause it and copy the syntax here. Well, let's go ahead and walk through it. So the start is asking, why do you want to live in Maine? Okay, so after that, you want it to break down to a series of questions. It could be a whole bunch of questions, whatever, but that's going to be a separate set. So that's why I broke it into 2 text fields. So why do you want to live in Maine? After clicking the node start or invoking the word start, it's going to echo this, and then this is the conditional set. It starts in this format, go, paren, go, colon, and then this is the actual answer, and then it is pipe delimited. Pipe is shift above the slashy thing. Pipe, and then this is the node name it's going to call if the user selects that option. And then you can replicate this a bunch of times, but 2 answers. I like the cold, and it goes to cold. Again, this is another node, and the second answer is just spaced. Go, it's green here, and then pipe, and then the name of the node, which is green. You can create a new node by just clicking new node and call it something else, and you'd put another conditional, and it has these little cool little interfaces, so when it gets long, you can actually see these groupings, okay? So on top of these things, it's gonna trigger cold, it's gonna go to this node. And this node's gonna echo out into the text box, this thing, right? But right down here, I have another operand. This is actually gonna set a variable back to GDevelop 5's global variables. You can do other things too, but see here, it starts with set space $, and the name of the global variable I just created, which is called which picture. And then it's a space $, and then the value in a string 1. If you go down the warm leg or green leg has a sentence, and then it has the same syntax referencing the global variable, except I set it for 2. And I'll show you why that is in a second. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna go apply. If we go back to our scene, this thing is called, this is our picture container. It's a sprite. If you double click it, it's got 3 animations. The first one being the one that you just saw, it's a placeholder. That's number 0, which is the normal first index. Number 1, remember, that's the cold answer. And number 2. So this is basically a trick to take that variable and redefine the animation we're pointing at for the object, like we did in the last videos, okay? And then if we run it, you can see it's gonna read in that JSON file. If I roll over the trigger, why do you like living in a great state of Maine? And that defaulted to the value 1 that was set into our yarn file. And up and down arrows are my keys to toggle the answers. And those answers were in the very node start. And as I change that from yarn, when it calls that node, it passes that variable back to which picture. And this is number 2, okay? And then I have it so when you hit the enter key, it's gonna play that text and replace it here. And then same thing. Okay, same thing with the other selection. Okay, so let's walk through the code real quick. I had such a tough time finding a working example, but so this is basically rolling over that text block. I think it was called read yarn or something like that. So you're gonna do is you're gonna start that yarn file. It's already loaded and defined, but this is actually gonna start reading it in and having it in memory. So the action is start dialog from branch start, okay? So you find that just by just typing yarn. No, you don't. Start dialog from branch. So our branch is defined. We just want to start reading it in, okay? Again, it's also important to make sure that this condition, you add that trigger once right here. And again, you just type it in here once and you just do trigger once. Otherwise, it could keep looping and trying to read over and over again, get some seizure-ific type behavior. And then the next line right after that is, it's another yarn command. Dialog line is text. Okay, there's 2 states of dialog lines. There's text and there's options, okay? So we're obviously gonna be reading in the copy, the conversation. We're not worried about just yet for this placeholder, the answers just yet. So just to find this, you're gonna do this dialog and you're gonna dialog line type, and that's gonna let us select, is it a text or is it an option? So, and that pops up here. And this time we picked initially, just like I said, text. So it's going to read in that text. And I made another one, so I'm going to delete that. Hopefully you don't mind the way I'm duplicating it, but if I started from scratch, I know I'm going to lose it. Okay, so the condition is the dialogue is being read in as text. So the action to that is change our text container, which I called convo, and we're going to set it to dialog tree clipped text. So back over here, this guy's name is convo. That's the control name. So how you would enter this line, so you don't have to memorize this, you click what we're going to act upon, and that's convo, and we're going to modify its text right now, and its operator, we're setting it to something, and it's dialog branch text. I'm sorry, dialog tree clipped text. It's what it is. Just do this. Okay. So, and this is identical again. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Just want to show you how I got there. Timer set scroll. This is important. It kind of keeps listeners on your text, so it just doesn't pop and actually paces and puts listeners so it knows when it finishes displaying the text, and sets your program into a ready state to do other actions. So you can set this easily by doing timer set scroll, and then you can set it to a variable. So timers are all functions in here, so use a search for timer, and then value of scene timer, and you can just make it whatever it is. I just point to, and actually I think that's the time between characters as it draws. And if you don't have a name for your timer, it'll just create it for you. Okay. So text scroll. I actually made this on the fly while I did this. So when that fires off, it's gonna do its thing. And because we created that thing, we can actually add the event to wait until it knows that all the text has been typewritered out on the screen. So we're ready to do our next action. It won't happen. And inside of this chunk, you can actually stop your animation, stop your dude from walking until the text is gone. And then from that, it goes to the next line. So if you have multiple lines in your node, it'll go bing, 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 bing. Otherwise, you can delete this line and require you to hit a button. Next line, next line, next line. Or you could have a button that says, show me the answers. I don't want to do that. I just want to do all of it at once. So it's going to do the text and the options. Okay, the options are the questions. And I put a little comment here. These little comment blocks are handy. Little comment blocks, so you can just click that and it adds another block that you can grab. It's good for debugging. I just started doing that recently because it's less hard on the eyes. Okay, so once you get to the questions, just like here when you did dialog line is text, this condition is actually checking to see if we got into a type of variable that is of type text. So it rippled through, and then when it's done, it stops and jumps to the next chunk, and it's reading more, and it's asking if the dialog type is set for options, we're going to do something else. And normally I could have that red, see this show? I could have this hidden, right? So just wipe it out. You could have that box hidden, like if you wanted like a HUD or a pop-up, something or other, and get it out of your way. But I'm just doing this as slick as possible so you can see all the pieces working. So it's checking to see if the dialog line is of type option. And again, it's dialog. The line type, what line type is it? So text, it's just talking to us. Options are those things we had in brackets that said go with the pipes saying what is the answer, and then what node do you want to go to if you have that selected. So you would select option there, but I'm not going to reuse that. That's that. And then once that goes along, I have arrow keys set. Okay, so you can see I have the down arrow and the up arrow. I'm not using your ASDF gamer key things, got tired of those. So the up arrow and the down arrow, it's on release, and it has this yarn command, select next option. So all that's going to do is highlight up and down whatever those options are. By doing dialog options, it displays all of them, so it doesn't hide them. It'll just show them concatenated or side by side based on how you format it. So on up arrow or down key, it's going to do next option, and then up key, it's going to do previous option. And these two guys are selectable here under actions. Select, or if it makes more sense in your head, you can type option because you're looking for options, and then you would just simply select next option, previous option, and there's no next or previous, and there's no operands. It'll just do the next sequential or previous one. So you have that set for both up and down arrow, and then the return key has the next yarn operation, which is confirm selected option. Okay, so that's what it does. I'm running out of words, sorry. Now there's another listener, which is the Mac Daddy here. It's listening for if a yarn object selection has changed. Okay, again, I did a trigger once here, so it doesn't do all kinds of weirdo stuff. So once it changes, it stops and it does all the crap over here I want. So real easy, we select the text object and do that the same kind of way. We're gonna do the text object of answer. We're gonna modify the text and we're gonna set it to, and then here's where some of the fun stuff happens. You're gonna wanna copy this line or memorize some of the keywords so you can do it yourself. And it's Dialog Tree, vertical option with this weirdo thing. I'll show you what that means in a second. That's basically the caret telling you what's in focus, okay? So if I change this guy to 2 of them, you'll see how that operates. There's the 2 carets right here. Up and down arrow changes my answer. Maybe there's a way to change the color of the text or something, I don't know. But that's not part of the pain of doing this. Let's change it back to a single character. Okay, so like I said, just through the tutorial, if you memorize these keywords or just try them while the video is going on. So the action is Dialog Tree option select. So let's recreate that. So our text box is called answer. We're going to act upon answer, and we're going to modify the text, and we're going to set it to be something. Set it to be something, and then it's option, dialog option list, and that's what it gets set to, and that's going to pass that back to Yarn. Okay, so we're going to cancel that out. So zoom in on this guy. This is probably one of the most important pieces. I don't need this line because those text fields weren't hidden, but in case you wanted to show and hide the thought bubble, if your character's, I don't know, crazy, you don't want it there the whole time. And then change. Now this is just for me, for swapping out the summer and winter pictures. Talking back from Yarn to my global variable to be able to switch that animation. So that's pretty easy to do. Changing the global variable to which picture, which was previously updated by Yarn itself. And I had to set it to the value +1 because the first picture in a sprite is 0, and I wanted that main one to be there until you switched seasons. So if we go back to our yarn file, and this is kind of funky too. It's already up here, but you don't know what to edit. So if you click edit, you click this thing again, edit dialog in Yarn Tree. I think Yarn is an extension that was added to GDevelop. So we opened with our conversation. The up and down arrows populated with these 2 go sets. And then 2 options are going to trigger 2 entries, cold or green. And it's going to go to the node of the matching name. Okay, so once you go to cold, this is a callback. This is setting our global variable in our scene from Yarn, which is really cool. And it's this syntax. Set, and make sure your global variable is preceded with a $sign. Okay, and then space equals space, the numerical value you want in quotes. It's kind of weird. Usually quotes, you don't put quotes for a numeric, but I think it has to be interpreted in a text processor. But anyway, that is the syntax. And then green, the same thing. Okay, apply. And that is a whole working example of a yarn tree. And from this, you should be able to do anything you want. Any number of branches. You could have nodes and conversations that just fractal off forever. But this is the core chunk that took me almost a month to get working. Thank you, YouTube, for not having one that I understood. Sorry if you made these, I just didn't understand them because I'm an idiot. So again, yarn trigger reads in the yarn, 2 different boxes, one for text, the other for options. We set that. Up and down arrows, change the variable, goes to yarn, gets back the number 2, swaps the animation index to number 2, back to number 1, and I have the enter key jumping to that final, painting the text of the final node. Okay, I hope this was clear enough. I tried to, but it was really, really frustrating on this one. So I think this is the hardest thing I'm gonna have to do for a while in my tutorial series. Okay, good luck. Comment if you have any questions, and like it if you want me to go through this pain anymore, because this sucked. All right, bye.